Beatrice Verhoeven, and thank you so much for joining us for the Hollywood Reporter Presents Q&A with Maggie Gyllenhaal, who was just nominated for a Best Adapted Screenplay Academy Award for The Lost Daughter. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to chat about the movie. Obviously, The Lost Daughter is based on a novel of the same name by Elena Ferrante. I was curious what made you want to adapt this particular book?
Well, I think she's a novelist who, I mean, there are a couple of others, but she's so stunningly honest, and in particular about the experience of being a woman in the world, and really appealed to me. And I remember when I first read her. First, I read these books called the Neapolitan novels, which were, are real bestsellers and were kind of flying off the shelves. And I never heard some of the things that she was writing about articulated before. And I found it really kind of stunning and shocking. And I thought, what if instead of just sitting alone in our rooms with these books, hearing these truths said out loud, what if I could put it into a context that was communal, like a movie theater where you're actually hearing these things said out loud? Then, the cat's really out of the bag. There's no going back from there in terms of these, really things that are taboo about our experience in the world.
And when you were writing the screenplay, did you have specific actors in mind for these characters, or were you kind of just going with the flow?
I didn't have specific actors in mind. I had kind of fantasy versions of the characters in my mind who got clearer and clearer to me as I was writing. And then, of course, were very, very different than the actors who ultimately did the movie, which is a real gift, actually. I have worked with directors as an actress who are trying to recreate the fantasy version of the character of the scene that they had in their head when they were alone in their room. And I've also worked with directors who see the beauty, which I really do, in the combination of minds coming together to make something. So the way I imagined Leda, and I can't exactly even pinpoint it anymore, but I had a kind of Leda in my mind who couldn't be more different from Olivia Colman and Jessie Buckley. But the gift that they gave me by bringing themselves into it, makes Leda then, exponentially more interesting than she could have been in any of our minds alone.
Was Leda cast at first, or was someone else cast first?
Yeah, Olivia was cast first. And then Olivia and I talked about who we both thought, but I was really curious who she thought would be interesting to play her young. And that we talked about a handful of actresses, but in fact, it was Olivia who introduced me to the idea of Jessie Buckley, whose work I didn't know. And the same weekend that she and I had lunch to talk about her doing the film, this film Wild Rose came out that Jessie plays. She plays she's Irish, but she plays a Scottish singer who wants to be a country Western singer. I don't know if you've seen it, but amazing movie. And I walked out of that theater going, I think that there are many, many good actors, very good actors. And I think there are only a handful of really, really brilliant ones. And I think Jessie is one of them. So yeah, Jessie was probably next, and then Dakota, I think. And my husband was always going to be in it. And in some ways, to answer your first question, I did kind of write every man in the movie for Peter, in a way. And then, of course, he played the one that was actually appropriate, actually right for him.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then at what point did you decide you wanted to direct the film as well? Was that a decision from the get-go?
Yes, the whole project was inspired by the idea of wanting to direct, which had been starting to wake up in me for a while. Looking back on it now, that I always probably was in some way a director, or that was in some ways always what I was working toward. I just didn't even let myself think about it or consider it. I didn't even let myself feel how hungry I was for more, which is dangerous. You know, I've been thinking about that, because if we don't let ourselves feel how hungry we are, the ways in which we're not satisfied, I'm thinking particularly as women, but you know, there's lots of ways to consider this, then we don't do anything about it. If you can't tolerate that feeling, if you cut it off, then you don't actually go about shifting things that get you satisfied. So I think I thought, and I love acting and I miss it, but I think I thought, since I was always butting up against the edge of something when I was acting, you know, I thought, well, that's just part of an artistic experience. You know, that's just how it is. You use the obstacles that you come up against to create more need. And now that I've become a director, I see it very differently. That it's like totally expansive. You can create, you must create boundaries for yourself, but they're my boundaries, you know?
Right, right. When did that hunger kind of start for you? When did that realization kick in?
Well, what I mean is that I think it's always been there. I think I've always thought directorially as an actress, but you know, I think most good actors do, to be honest with you. I mean, so many beautiful ideas in my film came from my actors and their intelligent storytelling way of thinking. There are actors, of course, who are probably some great ones who just, you know, stand where you tell them to stand, but it's not my thing really. And it's not the actors that I'm drawn to work with. So what I mean is I've kind of always had the hunger, but I do think something about producing where I really had a seat at the table and I was in production meetings and I was thinking things through, and or like on The Deuce where well, it's complicated with The Deuce too, because I was playing a director, which was interesting because I wasn't like just like faking being a director or something. Well, I was, but I was also, you know, really giving myself an opportunity to daydream and imagine, how would I shoot these scenes? Well, how would I treat these actors in this situation? And I've always been braver in my work than I am in my life, and kind of come at things first in my work and then in my life. But so that happened there too. But also what happened is I was, as a producer, having access to early cuts, having access to early drafts, and I really started to get a taste for how much I wanted to like get in there, you know, and I didn't really have access. And so it just, I mean, I sort of did, you know, as like a producer on a huge series, I sort of did, and I wanted more. You know? Yeah.
And now you're here. I would love to talk a little bit about production, because it's stunning, right? And it's like every person's dream to go on that vacation that she's on. It was shot in Greece, right? And I believe the book is set in Italy. Am I right?
Yes.
What prompted that change?
Well, okay, I'll try and tell this quickly. Originally, I adapted the film to take place in the States. And that's what I sold Ferrante to, the author. I said I wanted to adapt it to take place here. It was kind of like an Eastern Seaboard, unnamed, but kind of watercolor, Gothic town, maybe in Maine, you know, boardwalks and cotton candy and lobster rolls, stuff like that. And it worked well. And I really liked that version of it. And okay, I really have to tell this quickly, but it's not a story. But anyway, we scouted Maine. I loved Maine. And then as we're leaving, my producer's like, they have a 5% tax incentive in Maine. It's just never going to work on our tiny movie. And so I was like, oh, okay. Damn. So then we go to New Jersey, which has a 37% incentive. If you are anyway, we were a group of women, so we counted for like extra 2%, and it's good, but it's not great. But because financially it worked, all of a sudden we were like shooting in Jersey. It just happened so fast. And then not only that, we were going to shoot in Southern Jersey in this cool town, and I liked it, and everyone could be together, because a huge part of what I wanted and what I got ultimately was this kind of the way I imagine like an Altman movie was, you know, that everyone was together, that we were away from our lives, almost like a little company. But then in Jersey too, all of a sudden everyone was like, well, they'll be based in New York and they'll just drive 20 minutes and you'll squint and you can look at the beach. And I was like, what happened? How did we get here? And then we like sort of basically have our financing, and then the pandemic hits. And we keep, like everyone did at the time, we were behaving like it was going to be a few weeks. Let's keep having budget meetings, talk on the phone, let's get our financing. Still, it was Jersey for a few weeks. And finally, a few weeks into the pandemic, I said, Jersey is not going to work. It was kind of the first real move I made as a director. I said, first of all, look at the numbers in Jersey. It's not possible. Second of all, I don't like it. And in fact, I expected to be treated, because it was what I was used to, like the way I was treated as an actress with a big idea, which was, I was always met with resistance or often, or a big disruptive idea. Nobody wants that. But here I have a big disruptive idea and I'm the director, and everyone said, okay, let's go back to the drawing board. And we tried other things. We tried Nova Scotia, which feels a lot like Maine. And they were like, don't come here because of the pandemic. And we were so international. We had Israeli producers, French DP, British actors, Irish actors, and Americans. They didn't want us. And then one day, like kind of out of nowhere, I said, what about Greece? In Greece, I can be an outsider looking in the way she's an outsider looking in. And even if I don't understand what the groceries look like in the supermarket there, she doesn't either. And so it's okay. And as soon as I said Greece, everyone was like, I don't know, we like couldn't be stopped. We were in Greece like 3 weeks later. I'm not kidding, in pre-production.
Obviously, you had some challenges getting there in terms of explained, but was it kind of smooth sailing after that? Because if it was August 2020, it wasn't vaccines yet. Everyone was kind of figuring out how to get back.
There were a few productions who were getting back into production, but in terms of American productions, we were one of the very, very first films. I think probably one of the, maybe, I don't know, someone can correct me on this, but one of the first independent films, low budget movies. And I think one of the first films that wasn't going back into production to start. And so we were basically figuring out, the SAG protocols were coming out as we were there. There are people telling me things, I remember someone saying to me, you need to write down every time any actor will touch another actor and any time they will touch a prop. And I was like, oh, well, then actually let's not make the movie, because that's never going to work in my movie. People are going to have to be free to touch each other. And like, what do you mean? Like, truly, let's not make the movie. And then, everyone goes back to the drawing board and they say, okay, right, that's too much. That doesn't make sense.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a little excessive. Wow.
Because we were all figuring it out. Nobody really knew.
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, that wouldn't work at all, especially like with the grand finale of what happens, especially.
No. Anyway, like, what about just you're doing a scene with someone and you have the instinct to want to touch their face. I mean, like, really, I was like, I'm serious. Let's go home. Like, that's not going to work.
I was curious if there was maybe a scene that was particularly difficult for you to kind of adapt from the book to the screen.
So, okay, this is one thing I'll say, because it was my first time, and maybe this is just my style anyway, I think it probably is. I did not want to go into production without a script that I felt really could sustain us, was solid, didn't have holes in it where you have to like leap over something in order to make the scene make sense. I just thought, particularly as a first timer, that would have been stupid. So I made sure that the script was in a place that I felt was really strong before we started. So there wasn't a lot of kind of rejiggering things in the cut or on set, pretty much it was, things changed, of course, but pretty much the script is what we shot.
Yeah.
But that scene with the octopus where Ed Harris comes and cooks octopus and then eats octopus with Olivia, that is a scene that didn't work until the very, very end. And first of all, I struggled writing it, partially because I had first said it in Maine. And so Ed Harris was playing a kind of like salty dog, like a guy who'd just been there forever. And so the scene played very differently. But I had Ed Harris, like, I just had to make him work in Greece. So it took a little time to think, like, who is he? Why would Ed Harris be in Greece? Well, it's okay. Figured that out. I love the idea that he's kind of like, was like partying and like met Leonard Cohen a few times from a neighboring island. And really, one of the main points of that scene is that he also left his kids, but it's not the point of his life, although he's caused a lot of pain too. Anyway, I struggled with the writing of the scene, but then finally got to a place where I was really proud of it. They toast to cruelty and like, I really liked it. And then they acted it beautifully. Helene Louvart, my DP, she shot it so beautifully. And I had watched Don't Look Now, the Nicholas Roeg film, a couple of days before at the suggestion of my editor. I'd seen it before, but not in a long time. He suggested so many films to me I'd never seen that were so inspiring to me. This one I'd seen, but he was like, you should watch it because it's very different than The Lost Daughter, but it's a similar tone in that it's a horror movie. It's a thriller. It's kind of like a fancy French movie. It's a little bit funny, like mine. And so I watched it, and then I get in the cutting room and I'm like, Fonzie, the scene wasn't working. And I said, what if you cut this octopus scene? Because originally it was 2 scenes. They cook octopus and then they eat octopus. Mm-hmm. What if you cut it like the sex scene in Don't Look Now, where in that scene, they're making love and they're getting dressed intercut. And Fonz was like, Afonso Goncalves, who's just a brilliant genius. Usually I sat with him every minute, but on this day he was like, give me 30 minutes. And I left and I like walked around in New York, and I came back and it had lifted off. It was really great.
I wanted to ask you because it has many split, right, on its meaning due to its closing words. What did you always want that kind of to happen, to have these people kind of question themselves and what they thought happened to Leda? And what was your conclusion?
Well, no, I didn't anticipate this mysterious questioning about the ending at all.
Everyone's like,
I really like it. I really like it. So I don't want to definitively say one thing or another, but I will say there's a few things I'll say about the ending. One is it's the exact opposite in terms of the words than the novel. So the novel ends with she's been stabbed, but just by a hat pin. It's not it says she's been stabbed. She's in her apartment. She doesn't go to the beach in the book. And her daughters call her in the book and they say, oh my God, Mom, we haven't heard from you. We didn't know if you were dead or alive. And she says, I'm dead, but I'm fine. And I just couldn't really understand that. To me, this is a movie about somebody coming alive. To me, this is a movie about somebody being brave enough to look at the darkest, most shameful parts of themselves, which is a terrifying thing to do. But I think once you do that, often you find a little life there. Yeah. So I changed it. I switched it. Ferrante totally gave me her blessing. She actually told me she preferred it. I think she was saying the same thing, but just in a much more complicated way, much darker way. So I switched it. And she says instead, dead. No, I'm alive, actually. And I think I love, so the orange and, the telephone and these sort of trippy, it's a story about a woman's unconscious. When I finished writing the movie, something was missing and I couldn't figure out what it was. And then I thought about the movie, oh, what is it called? The Hal Ashby movie, Being There, where at the end of the movie, he walks off onto the water. And you're like, what? And I thought, I need something like that, like something magic, because this is a story of the unconscious. And so the orange coming up, that's what I was like, now I have an ending. And the only other thing I'll say is, like, she did all this stuff, fucked someone else, left her children. I mean, the most aberrant, transgressive, painful thing you could do. And yet still, the point of the movie is not to indict her. She's punishing herself. She's indicting herself. And so I think it's important that she says she's alive at the end.
I actually like kind of get, now that you said that, I kind of understand what Elena meant, and that I agree that she was saying what you were saying, just in a more, in a
darker way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually get it though. Like maybe like her old self was dead and she's now, or something like that.
How many times, not many, but there, I believe in a life that there are deaths and there are rebirths. And in order to have a rebirth, you have to have a death, and it's awful. You know, it hurts. And I guess I really do think this character is a hero to be brave enough to go through that.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Maggie. We're so appreciative of you joining us, and thank you for joining us for the Hollywood Reporter Presents screening series.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.